Welcome to Optimal Frequency. I'm Grant. I talk to spirits here at my house using sources of white noise. I then remove the actual sound of the white noise with an artificial intelligence that leaves behind only the spirit responses to my questions. We are now on episode 4 of the Albert Ostman story. This is the final episode. When last we left off in episode 3, Albert had just been picked up in the middle of the night, carried off 3 hours in his sleeping bag over the back of a Sasquatch. He was set down. He comes to the lights. Finally, he's able to see. He's surrounded by 4 of these big hairy creatures. And so he ends up spending 6 days with them. So we're going to cover that in today's episode and how he managed to get away from them at the end. Enjoy. The first day not much happened. I had to eat my food cold. The young fellow was coming nearer me and seemed curious about me. My one snuff box was empty, so I relied it toward him. When he saw it coming, he sprang up quick as a cat and grabbed it. He went over to his sister and showed her. They found out how to open and close it. They spent a long time playing with it. Then he trotted over to the old man and showed him. They had a long chatter. Next morning I made up my mind to leave this place, if I had to shoot my way out. I could not stay much longer. I had only enough grub to last me till I got back to Toba Inlet. I did not know the direction, but I would go downhill and I would come out near civilization someplace. I rolled up my sleeping bag, put that inside my pack sack, packed the few cans I had, swung the sack on my back, injected the shell in the barrel of my rifle, and started for the opening in the wall. The old man got up, held up his hands as though he would push me back. I pointed to the opening. I wanted to go out. But he stood there pushing towards me and said something that sounded like Soka, Soka. I backed up to about 60 feet. I did not want to be too close. I thought if I had to shoot my way out, a 30-30 might not have much effect on this fellow. It might make him mad. I only had 6 shells, so I decided to wait. Section 3. Why didn't you try and sneak away at night? How could you possibly sleep with these creatures so near? So when you finally told this story to John, and he's related here in the book for you, how is it you could remember the words or the sounds that these Sasquatch made? You use very specific examples, and yet this is decades after this took place. Did you elaborate on the actual truth when you told your story to John? Are there any descendants alive today left from that family of Sasquatch that kidnapped you? The following day, I did not see the old lady till about 4 p.m. She came home with her arms full of grass and twigs and all kinds of spruce and hemlocks, as well as some kind of nuts that grew on the ground. I have seen lots of them on Vancouver Island. The young fellow went up the mountain to the east every day. He could climb better than a mountain goat. He picked some kind of grass with long sweet roots. He gave me some one day. They tasted very sweet. I gave him another snuff box with about a teaspoon of snuff in it. He tasted it, then went to the old man. He licked it with his tongue. They had a long chat. I took a chew of snuff, smacked my lips, and said, "That's good." The young fellow pointed to the old man, said something that sounded like "ook." I got the idea that the old man liked snuff and that the young fellow wanted a box for the old man. I shook my head. I motioned with my hands for the old man to come to me. I do not think the young fellow understood what I meant. They did not come near me again that day. I had now been here 6 days, but I was sure I was making progress. If only I could get the old man to come over to me, get him to eat a full box of snuff that would kill him for sure, and that way, killing himself, I wouldn't be guilty of murder. You said the female left and was gone all day, and she returned at 4 p.m. with her arms full of sticks, grasses, and nuts. If they knew how to weave themselves blankets, why didn't they weave themselves a basket for carrying things? You were with them for 6 days. They never harmed you. What did they want from you? Did they act like what we've seen, other people have seen, recently on TV and that about large apes? Like, did they clean each other, or did they act more human? I've heard before from other stories and read it that Bigfoot are nocturnal. When did the Bigfoot or the Sasquatches go to sleep? The young fellow might have been between 11 to 18 years old and about 7 feet tall and might weigh about 300 pounds. His chest would be 50 to 55 inches, his waist about 36 to 38 inches. He had wide jaws, narrow forehead that slanted upward, round at the back, about 4 or 5 inches higher than the forehead. The hair on their heads was about 6 inches long. The hair on the rest of their body was short and thick in places. The woman's hair on the forehead had an upward turn like some women have. They call it bangs among women's hairdos. The old lady could have been anything between 40 to 70 years old. She was over 7 feet tall. She would be about 500 to 600 pounds. She had very wide hips and a goose-like walk. She was not built for beauty or speed. Some of those lovable brassiers and uplifts would have been a great improvement on her looks and her figure. The man's eye teeth were longer than the rest of the teeth, but not long enough to be called tusks. The old man must have been near 8 feet tall, big barrel chest and big hump on his back. Powerful shoulders. His biceps on upper arm were enormous and tapered down to his elbows. His forearms were longer than common people have, but well proportioned. His hands were wide. The palm was long and broad and hollow like a scoop. His fingers were short in proportion to the rest of his hand. His fingernails were like chisels. The only place they had no hair was inside their hands and the soles of their feet and upper part of their nose and eyelids. I have no idea what size shoes they would need. I was watching the young fellow's foot one day when he was sitting down. The soles of his feet seemed to be padded like a dog's foot, and the big toe was longer than the rest and very strong. In mountain climbing, all he needed to do was get footing for his big toe. They were very agile. To sit down, they turned their knees out and came straight down. To rise, they came straight up without help of hands or arms. I don't think this valley was their permanent home. I think they moved from place to place as food is available in different localities. They might eat meat, but I never saw them eat meat or do any cooking. Did you actually see a family of Bigfoots, or did your description come from other accounts of what Sasquatch looked like from at the time when you told John? Did you make up the description based off of other stories? Okay, so I think this is important enough to make a note of it. I'm going to give you my take on this before I play it so that you can keep this in your mind, okay? There's 3 things said that were captured on the Yeti mic that's at the sink and running down to the computer, okay? And then there was another thing that I put in there captured by the Sony. So 2 different devices, okay? So the first 3 things was a voice says, "Gentlemen, now I'm pissed," okay? And that voice, I believe, is Albert Ostman. Another voice, a different voice, comes in and says, "Made it up?" And Albert Ostman says, "I didn't." It's the same voice where he says, "Gentlemen, I'm pissed," and "I didn't." Those are the 2 same voices, okay? And you can hear a distinct different voice, the one that asked, did you make it up? Then on the other camera, the Sony camera, it's the same voice as the other 2 where Albert Ostman spoke, where he says, "I'm innocent." So see if the 3 phrases that I think belong to Albert Ostman, if you think that's the same voice, because I think it is, which is very interesting. Not only is it the same voice carrying throughout, it's captured on 2 different devices. How did you know that the 2 young ones were male and female? You said the female was flat as a board. Could you see their genitalia? Why were you so sure the snuff would do the trick? It seems like wishful thinking to me. Albert, did you ever go back to that area, maybe to look for the gold mine? So in your lifetime, did you ever go back to that area? I would soon have to make a break for freedom. Not that I was mistreated in any way. One consolation was that the old man was coming closer each day and watching me when I took a pinch of snuff. One morning, after I had my breakfast, both the old man and the boy came and sat down only 10 feet away from me. That morning, I had made coffee. I had saved up all the dry branches I had found, and I had some dry moss, and I used all the labels from the cans to start a fire. I got my coffee pot boiling, and it was strong coffee too. The aroma from boiling coffee was what brought them over. I was sitting eating hardtack with plenty of butter on it and sipping coffee. I was smacking my lips, pretending it was better than it really was. I set the can down that was half full. I pulled out a full box of snuff, took a big chew. Before I had time to close the box, the old man reached for it. He grabbed the box and emptied it into his mouth, swallowed it in one gulp. Then he licked the box inside with his tongue. After a few minutes, his eyes began to roll over in his head. He was looking straight up. I could see he was sick. Then he grabbed my coffee can that was quite cold by this time. He emptied that in his mouth, grounds and all. That did no good. He stuck his head between his legs and rolled forwards a few times away from me. Then he began to squeal like a stuck pig. I grabbed my rifle. I said to myself, "This is it. If he comes for me, I will shoot him plumb between his eyes." But he started for the spring. He wanted water. I packed my sleeping bag in my pack sack with the few cans I had left. The young fellow ran over to his mother. Then she began to squeal. I started for the opening in the wall, and I just made it. The old lady was right behind me. I fired one shot at the rock over her head. I guess she had never seen a rifle fired before. She turned and ran inside the wall. I injected another shell in the barrel of my rifle and started downhill, looking back over my shoulder every so often to see if they were coming. I was in a canyon and good traveling, and I made fast time. Must have made 3 miles in some world record time. I came to a turn in the canyon and I had the sun on my left. That meant I was going south and the canyon turned west. I decided to climb the ridge ahead of me. I knew that I must have 2 mountain ridges between me and salt water, and by climbing this ridge I would have a good view of this canyon, so I would see if the Sasquatch were coming after me. I had a light pack and was making good time up this hill. I stopped soon after to look back to where I came from, but nobody followed. So in the grand scheme of the universe, Albert, does it matter one way or another that you told this tale? When you died, Albert, and you crossed over, did you have any regrets from your life? Now, I didn't look to see if John Green has passed over. Maybe he's still alive, but if he's on your side where you are, Albert, do you ever see him? I just want to say that for those of you that have stuck around for this 4 sessions, almost an hour long of this, which I found it to be very interesting. For all the crappy, not so clear responses, this response, in its clarity, astounded me, but not only that, the weight of what he said. They were friends, and you know what? They both died, and he's seen them, and they've talked, and they're still hanging out. That is amazing. Albert, is it important to you at all that this story is still shared, maybe even as a form of entertainment? Mr. Ostman, is there anything else you want to tell us about this experience that you had? All right, sir, I want to thank you very much for coming through, if you did, and answering our questions about the time you were kidnapped by Sasquatches. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to analyze all that, put it together, and we'll go from there. So I want to ask my team now. It's been a few days since I spoke to Stephen Hawking. He said if we posted the equipment, he was going to help us. Have you guys made any headway with making this more clear? Okay, those are absolutely amazing responses. I mean, they're direct, they're clear. I get a direct answer like, yeah, they're actually working on it. They even mentioned Steven's name. And of course, it makes sense they would have had to repeat some of what's going on to him. I mean, I myself have been working on this for 2,000 hours. Poor Stephen Hawking probably is like, what's going on here? But it's amazing that they reply that, yeah, they're working on it. And then they give us a time frame, like not before June. So in other words, it's January now. So 6 months from now, maybe the messages will come in clear. I mean, this just is, it's mind-blowing stuff to me. So for those of you that watch the channel, support me, I thank you. This is pretty awesome stuff. Love, peace, joy, and adventure. We'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Is there something I need to do on my end to make it more clear that you've been able to discover?